Ladies and gentlemen, Rex Bear Leak Project, how the heck are you? I have the man, the legend, the way of life, Diamond from Oppenheimer Ranch Project in Southern Colorado. Had a great conversation earlier today. He did a podcast earlier today on his YouTube channel. Make sure to subscribe to his YouTube channel. I'll leave the link in the video description box. And it describes how we're in a, oh, am I muted? Okay, we're in a what's called a Planetary K Zero level right now. So for the past 30 hours, it's been at zero or virtually zero, Planetary K, not Planet K, like the store in Texas, or Planet X. Somebody said, is this going to be another Planet X Doom video? No, it's going to be more Doom based towards the grand solar minimum. But here's the good news. There's a way out. Don't be scared. Be prepared. And speaking of being prepared, ladies and gentlemen, have you checked out the latest specials at preparewithleakproject.com? We're talking 92 meows for $75, or you can get 150 of them for like $147. It's ridiculous. No, I'm sorry, 180 mils. It's ridiculous. 4 weeks worth of food for less than $150, or you can get 2 weeks worth of food for $75. Organic seeds, water filtration systems, all the best survival gear at discounted prices for Leak Project listeners. Okay, now let's get to the podcast. Diamond, it is awesome to have you on the program. Really appreciate you coming out. You're extremely busy. Not only are you doing organic farming, cutting down trees, setting up firewood, building houses, but you're also doing podcasts and researching the grand solar minimum. So how about that? How the heck are you? Thanks for coming on the show. And I'll hit the unmute button. Boing.
Boom.
Hello.
So thanks for having me on. And I just put up a podcast today on the KP Zero day that we had, which is pretty standard for a solar minimum. I mean, every solar minimum, we get the first 24-hour period at KP Zero. If I can quick show you where we are in the K index now, I'll bring it up. And what you can see is that starting early midday, October 18th, we dropped to KP Zero. Now, prior to that, we had a 12-hour period in KP Zero, October 17th, followed by a little breakout up to KP1, and then back down to KP Zero for 36 straight hours. And during our podcast live now, we're back up into KP1. Now, the K index, if you're out there and you don't know what it is, this is a numerical scientific quantification for disturbances in the horizontal component of Earth's magnetic field, with an integer in a range from 0 to 9. 1 being calm, 0 being psychic, and we'll get to that, and 5 or more being indicated as red and geomagnetic storm. When you get up into geomagnetic storms in KP index of 8 and 9, we're talking potential grid failure. In fact, John Casey, those of you that follow the Grand Solar Minimum, author of Dark Sun, Upheaval, and many other books, Cold Sun, Dark Winter. Yeah, that's it. He, in fact, had a stroke during our last major geomagnetic storm last October when the KP reached KP9. And this is after a major X flare we had last year. I don't know if you remember that, but someone in our own very community, Grand Solar Minimum community, was affected by this space weather. So that's just a little background on the KP index. And if we come check out space weather, Rex, are you sharing this?
Yep, absolutely. It's on the screen.
Okay, you can see that the purple is the plasma speed. This is coming from the sun. And as it drops down during these solar minimum periods, which if you're new to sun science and you're just listening, a solar cycle happens every 22 years, which is the complete flipping of the magnetic field of the sun. On Earth, we call each half of a flip a solar cycle. When positive goes to negative, that's about 11 years. And then when negative goes back to positive, that is another 11 years. So these solar cycles that happen every 11 years are only half of a solar magnetic field reversal. And that's the truth. But let's get back to the fact that we're entering one of the deepest solar minimums in human history right now. Take a look at these charts. Purple shows the plasma speed, and sometime during the 18th, see, the plasma speed dropped down below 300 kilometers per second, or in that range, and it is still dropping. When we get into times of solar quiet like this, that is when we get the KP down low into 0. It popped back up to 1 recently because you can see up here in yellow, the density has picked up a little bit in the plasma stream, and that prevents the cosmic rays from coming in as quickly as they had been for the last 36 hours. So when we go into this geomagnetic quiet, we'll get up to the blue stuff in a second. When we're in solar minimum, the magnetosphere of the Earth shuts down, and that allows cosmic rays to rain in through our heads, through our bodies, and into the Earth, through the Earth, actually. And we're even, David Dubine just put up an excellent video tonight where they actually have been reporting on cosmic rays emanating from the Antarctic pole. That's the South Pole. Completely unorthodox and unexplainable by standard cosmology, physics, and the entire narrative. It just fits nowhere. So we have cosmic rays actually shooting out of the South Pole of our planet, which means that the Earth could be accumulating them like a battery, and we have too many, and they're now getting shot out of the buttocks, so to speak. But let's get back more into forecasting your own solar weather here, so that you know how to prepare in the coming years. The next few years, these events will get worse and worse, more pronounced and more extreme. So what you're looking for is the solar wind speed to reduce below 350 kilometers per second, as it has, with the density down here by the 1. When you get those two cocktails, the temperature will be stable and we will fall into KP0. Now, many people have been saying in recent times, the last decade, that KP0 is dangerous for those with cardiac conditions that are susceptible. But the only factual information that I can glean, and others that have done research, is that the only real medical, we're talking physical medical problems, occur up in geomagnetic storm. And that would be when the KP would be 7, 8, or 9, up in the high region. The Earth is being charged with electricity, and it would make sense. Your biological unit, your body, would also be charged and could short circuit. But what we are finding more, and especially with the release of the Freedom of Information Act documents, thanks to Mudrock in 2007, the CIA actually has hidden documents, thousands of pages, where they did studies on human health in all of these ranges from 0 to 9, and they found the most significant correlations on their studies came at KP0. And this is the time when Earth hits this, when the majority of humans experience near-death experiences. It's insane. So somehow this KP0, I likened it to a portal to the afterworld. But what also is known is that psychic abilities are enhanced at these times. And I think it is due to the cosmic ray stream, a connection to an external source of the universe, allowing us this power link, so to speak. It's like a power up. So do you want to chime in and direct the convo from there?
I do. I want to talk about this for a minute because okay, so the graph you're showing right now is showing the levels, and I did some research on the Planetary K Index, and I found some very interesting reports. One is Workshop Report on Space Weather Risks in Society. That's nasa.gov. I'll leave the link for that. And then another one was the, where was it at here? It was in reference to a study that was on CIA Vault, but this isn't from the sun, but it's just showing electromagnetics that were used for different reactions with the physical body and the brain. And, it was showing a lot of stuff from the Cold War era. But it's interesting because obviously if they can learn how to make technologies that can use electromagnetics to interfere with people, the space is a lot more effective at that, and it's a lot more extreme. So on a global scale, when there were charts showing suicide rates also, and compared to some of these timelines, I find it very interesting. And I also think about the total solar eclipse that I was recently at in Smiths Ferry, Idaho, at the 33rd degree parallel, when it was just completely dark, when the sun was over, just completely hidden, and how it cooled off. And then I was talking to some natives. They said that their beliefs, when that happens, they go inside. They don't even want to be outside. And I wonder why they have those beliefs, and what started that, and what are the physical, mental, and spiritual implications of these electromagnetic fields. So with what you're bringing up, I find it fascinating, and I'd like you to describe more of the Planetary K Index in connection to what the K Index actually is. Because I know you showed some of the numbers, but you did a really neat analysis on it in that 4-minute video you did on your YouTube channel earlier today. You're muted. Let me unmute you. There we go.
Okay, here are hearing this.
Now I can hear you.
Am I screen sharing this, Rex?
Yes.
Okay, so here's the estimated Planetary K Index 3-hour data. Okay, you can get finer grain data. You can get 1-minute data on this stuff. But the 3-hour data is what we use because it is the consensus from the satellites. And you can come down here, and the explanation is self-explanatory here. The K Index, by extension of the Planetary K Index, they're used to characterize the magnitude of geomagnetic storms solely. So this is a composite of what our magnetosphere on Earth is doing and what the sun is shooting out at us together. The more active the sun is, the bigger our magnetosphere grows. It grows a shield. So our shields on planet Earth come up during solar max, when solar flares are shooting at us. The the magnetosphere gets thick. And then during solar minimum, when the sun quiets down, the magnetosphere pulls in. And we tend to get more KP0 days when cosmic rays can flow hit the surface of the Earth. Now, what we're entering in is a grand solar minimum at the same time when our Earth's magnetic field is flipping. This happens every 11,500 years approximately, according to Robert Felix and others.
Yes. Did you just say that the Earth's magnetic field is shifting right now?
It's flipping. It's going to flip.
Red alert. Red alert. Will Robinson danger.
The poles are rapidly flipping, and within 20 years, the poles, the North and the South Pole, will meet on the same side of the Earth, somewhere west of Indonesia. Yeah, it's crazy. But based on the current calculations and the movement of the poles, they're headed towards a 0 point west of Indonesia in 2035. Now, when that happens, our magnetosphere could wane as low as 5%. Some say 0. Some say 0 is impossible. I think maybe at the moment they pass, they could hit 0 for an instant, in which case cosmic rays would be insane at that moment. Anything would just shed into the Earth. Debris, satellites, alien spacecraft, any rocks up in the atmosphere, millions of tons of cosmic debris per hour at that moment. We would have to shovel it off our cars, maybe. No one knows, because we haven't had a civilization that was alive during that time that wrote it down, that wasn't burned, so we didn't know about it. So that's the problem. The history back of what happened 11,500 years ago is missing. The megalithic cultures didn't write anything down. What they did do is leave us astronomical circles and other very unique mathematical equations, but we still aren't using them to figure out what they were trying to tell us. So the events we're going into are very unique. And this KP0 event is just a taste, because we're going to see events like this in the next 2 years where the KP stays at 0 for a whole week. And I predicted last year that this solar minimum, we would see the KP stay at zero for over 1 month. And no one knows what would happen on the planet. But according to Sasha Dobler and others who have studied this, Dr. Trevor Toller, there is good evidence that amazing things happen to genetics. These are times when evolution occurs, spiritually, physically, mentally, all types of evolution. The Renaissance, the last mini ice age, the Maunder minimum, was a time of high cosmic ray flux, almost no sunspots, as recorded by people looking. And that's where we're headed. And that is when all these amazing symphonies were written, the Stradivarius violins were created. So these could be times of enlightenment. And I believe that that's where we're headed.
Now, also, when we were talking before about these changes from the sun, with these long periods of it being at a zero, the planetary K index being at a zero, you think that there could be physical and spiritual evolutions of unprecedented proportions. And you've made some jokes about this also.
Yeah. So there's a couple of things that we need to delineate quickly. What you're looking at here is the HMI intensity gram of the sun. A lot of people just started looking at the sun because it's in the news. The HMI intensity actually shows the activity on the surface. So if there are any sunspots, we would see black dots here. What do you see, Rex?
The black dots on the screen might just be from my screen. I need to clean it.
Yeah, there are no sunspots there. That's typical of solar minimum. And we're going to be seeing this for several more years, a blank disk. And this means that cosmic rays are raining in down on our planet. If there's no activity on the surface of the sun, there's no reason for our magnetosphere to strengthen and to prevent things from raining down. So one of the predictions during these events is that, and I'm not just talking grand solar minimum, we're talking the flipping of the magnetic pole of Earth. This is a rare event. The last time it happened, the last magnetic excursion was 11,500 years ago. That's the end of the last ice age, folks. And
I need to add
the one that's
something.
happening now, go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt. I just need to add something it's spooky, but it is what it is. The Adam and Eve essay by Chan Thomas, it was classified for many years. I was fortunate enough to pick up a copy. I've got a hard copy. You can pick up the PDF now directly from the CIA's vault and read it. It doesn't have all the information in there, but it has most of it. That is one of the timelines that he specifically talks about, an extreme cataclysm that wiped out the majority of the planet, that wiped out the majority of humans on the planet. It was about that time frame. And the way that he describes it, Diamond, is like the film 2012. It's so extreme. I mean, we're talking lava coming from underground. But when you're talking about this magnetic pole shift, he describes what causes these mass cataclysms is gray matter from the center of the Earth that somehow releases from its natural habitat. It gets out, and then it causes earthquakes. It causes tectonic plates to move. It causes a tsunami that's so extreme. It causes tidal waves that are so extreme they go across entire continents. And if you're below 10,000 feet, you're toast. Like, you're literally going to be toast. Burnt toast. Your thoughts?
I've heard of the gray matter, and I don't know what it might be. It could be large amounts of some type of lava that we've never seen that extrude in huge quantities. But what we do know is what you're looking at here, that stratospheric radiation is increasing in epic proportion. Washington State, Maine, Oregon, Kansas, Illinois, you can't escape it. And as you get further north in latitude, the increase is more extreme and more dangerous. And as you go up in altitude, the cosmic rays become more extreme and dangerous. And as our magnetosphere wanes over the next 2 decades towards the 0 point, there are many people that are claiming that many catastrophes could happen. The first one is a huge EMP emanating from the sun. Rolf Wish and others suggest that the sun will reach a 0 point when it blips and shuts down and shoots off the last remaining energy directly towards Earth. And at this point, it could be very bad for our grid. And that type of scenario is corroborated by some in the mainstream. Now, the second scenario is that when the magnetosphere wanes towards zero in a few decades, there's nothing preventing satellites and things from quickly re-entering the Earth. And also, all of the shooting stars and all of the plasma discharge things we see at night as green streaks in the sky, those won't be green streaks so much. The ionosphere will be collapsing, and more of these objects will have less time to burn up and more time to hit the planet. And when they hit the planet, they will likely hit the ocean, because our planet is mostly ocean. So in that case, that would mean every 11,500 years, we have catastrophic tsunamis, maybe multiple ones, that are triggered by objects coming in as the magnetosphere collapses. It's just one hypothesis. Now, the EMP threat is just as insane, because we live in a technologically based world. If we have an EMP that comes off the sun that's equivalent to an X300, good night. That's basically all I can say.
And I want to get into that in a minute, but before I do, I want to share this with you. This is the Chan Thomas Adam and Eve essay, where he compiles a ton of evidence. And listen to this. This is page 17. The overwhelming evidence, when put in order, gives a dramatic picture of which areas have been at the North Pole, when they moved to the pole, and how long they were there. The Arctic Ocean, 6,500 years ago, was the start. The Sudan Basin, 11,500 years ago, was the start. 6,500 years ago was the end. The Hudson Bay, 18,500 years ago, was the start. 11,500, the end. The Caspian Sea, 29,000 years ago, it started. 18,500, it ended. Wisconsin, 35,000 years ago, it ended. 29,000 years ago. So about 5,000 to 10,500 year intervals. Your thoughts?
What intervals are they speaking of? Glaciation?
What areas have been at the North Pole and when they moved to the pole? So the overwhelming evidence, when put in order, given a dramatic picture of which areas have been at the North Pole, when they moved to the pole, and how long they were there.
Well, to me, that means glacial inception. So this is just ice shifting around the North Pole. When the magnetic field.
You're right.
Yeah,
it says right here, you can see then the ice ages are not a matter of advancing and retreating ice. It's simply that different areas of the Earth are in polar regions at different times for different durations of time, with the changes between positions taking place in a fraction of a day. The story around the world gives a silent testimony. The Berezovka mammoth, frozen in mud with buttercups in his mouth. The age of the gorges below the Niagara Falls and St. Anthony Falls, both about 6,500 years ago. The sudden end of the Laurentian Basin ice cap in Canada about 11,500 years ago. The uninterrupted year of the evolution of the Galapagos over 11,000 years ago. The geological datings in the Murrumbidgee River Basin system in Australia, showing the end of the ice cap about 11,500 years ago. The age of fossil bones taken at the Wilshire Boulevard tar pits about 11,000 years ago. The sudden end of the work in the prehistoric city of Tiahuanaco, Peru, 9550 BC or 11,500 years ago. The Leonard Woolley.
Teotihuanaco.
Thank you. I'm like, I can't speak English. Leonard Woolley's great work in the Holy Land, dating Noah's flood, 6,000 years ago. The end of the Wisconsin ice cap, 29,000 years ago. The sudden 200-foot rise in the oceans all over the world, 6,000 to 7,000 years ago. The sudden rise in the St. Lawrence riverbed, 6,500 years ago. The changing levels of the shoreline in the Hudson Bay. The granite blocks from the Alps sitting on the eastern slope of the Jura Mountains at 4,000 feet above sea level. The great legendary Fraser's uncovering of over 8,000 separate inundation survival legends in the Malay Peninsula region. Wow. The Pajark Marsh in Australia, which shows a quick extinction of a civilization 11,500 years ago. No wonder this became sensitive material because this is dating stuff they don't want you to know about. And now you're adding to this cosmic radiation that we're dealing with right now. And this is the data right now.
Yeah. Well, so what my interpretation of what you just read me is a multiplicity of layers of different catastrophes all thrown together. There's good evidence, like I've told you before, that there have been 5 or 6 major floods since the first major flood at the end of the last ice age. So 11,500 years ago, according to the Greenland Ice Core data, global temperatures were fluctuating 11 to 14 degrees centigrade within the period of a few decades. That's insane. The whole planet is Al Gore and we're all burning up. It's going to be 1.5 C and we're all dead is total nonsense. When the temperature goes up and down twice, 11 degrees C and 14 degrees C in an 1,100 year period, 60% of all land mammals died. That's when we need to be afraid. And that is actually where we're headed now. We're headed into a cooling event that drops global temperature up to 9 degrees C in the next 1,000 years. It's gradual and it comes in pulses. And if you look at the ice core data back just during the Holocene, the last 11,005, you're going to see a major cooling event 8,500 years ago, a major cooling event at 6,000 years ago. And these are associated with the smaller cycles. These aren't even the big ones, which we happen to also be on. So all of the major catastrophes that ended all of the empires in recent past, the Miocene Empire, the Roman Empire, the Vikings, and others, those empire-ending events were minuscule compared to the event that we're entering right now. In just the next 13 years, we will experience an event equivalent to the empire-ending events. But our event isn't going to end there. It continues for decades more as we descend into the next glacial period. So, and when we have this waning magnetosphere during either grand solar minimums or we happen to be in a grand solar minimum at the end of the interstadial, this is a 1,000-year bond cycle. This is the 200-year grand solar minimum cycle and the 11,500-year magnetic reversal all at the same time. What we're going to see is those biblical events. We're going to see probably an object hit an ocean and cause a tsunami worldwide, flooding everyone out on the coast. There will be no warning. There'll be just a few hours to a few more hours than that. There's nowhere you're going to drive when a 1,200-foot wave starts coming at you in New York City. Where are you going? You're going under the ocean, and you're going to be washed out. So this is just one of the things that can happen in our lifetimes. They're very exciting times, but there is no need to be afraid because there is nothing you can do about cosmogenic events except experience them. So don't be scared, be prepared. You could see where we are here. This is what the mainstream graph is. The light blue graph in the back, that used to be the data until last year. This is more of the global warming narrative. And the mainstream actually changed to the CMIP6 data. And you can see the drop off from 23 to 24 in solar activity. This brings us all the way back into the 1900s, early 1900s. And we're headed down to levels back in the 1800s and earlier in the near future. And this is the mainstream's estimate of what cycle 25 will bring. Some people don't believe it's going to be this high. They bring it more into this range where I'm drawing here, which brings us all the way back to the 1600s in 5 years. That's cold. I don't know if you know how cold that is. That's been cold. And what happens in the interim as we get that cold is that crop losses across the planet occur, global famine, unrest, governments mask it all, and there's wars started and borders are sealed. I mean, this is all in the historical narrative. You don't have to go far to research what happened back then. So that we have all of these things layering upon each other. The best thing you can do is prepare for unexpected events in the future, which would be a grid that fails for a long period of time, and looting to occur. Just like there's massive looting happening in the southeast right now after that hurricane made landfall. It's actually, I think, a shoot to kill order, because there were so many looters stealing stuff that they're now going to shoot anyone that's in those communities. So just imagine that times 1,000.
Where did you hear that?
Event. Where did I hear what?
Well, you just that there was a shoot on site, basically. Where you just
they warned people last night that if any looters were seen, they would be shot in those areas that have curfews.
Like
because there were so many people arrested. Yeah, I read it somewhere.
Wow. Yeah, and like you said, Diamond, imagine that going worldwide. Imagine all civilizations that have a foundation of law and order are now having to deal with that extreme situation. And we've talked a bit about this before. I remember David Devine talked about this, that he feels the reason a lot of this law and order has been put in play is because of the future of this extreme weather, crop shortages, water shortages, possibility of another Carrington type event. And you brought up the magnetosphere being as weak as it is. If we have a Carrington type event with everything being hooked up electronically, it would be an absolute nightmare. I did a podcast earlier today with you on your land, showing your not your greenhouse, but your organic garden out there that you've spent 3 years on. I mean, do you think that people are even going to have a chance unless they know what they're doing, or they've got tons of food and supplies built up? And I mean, maybe years worth. I mean, how extreme is it going to get, and for how long?
Well, that all really depends on how it unwinds, how it goes down. Let me share this. And this is the empire ending graphic that everyone likes to look at. This is the central Greenland temperatures from 4,000 years before present until now. And this has been modified several times. The reason is because the mainstream has this, where we are today, up above here at 28.5. And that's kind of to mask the fact that it was warmer in the past. This is actually adjusted to the most current understanding of the temperature graph since the Minoan Warm. And this is only coming out in the last year and a half, this data, adjusted this way. Now, the purple stars here are the grand solar minimums that happen regularly. And we're at the next purple star, it's right here. It happens very quickly. You can see all of the purple stars are preceded by a direct drop-off that happens very rapidly. Before the purple star, the drop-off is immediate, meaning within one generation. The Minoans were destroyed in a generation. And then this is called the Hallstatt disaster. The planet was frozen and the stuff hit the fan here for hundreds of years. And then it warmed up, and then Rome was the talk of the town. And then all the volcanoes exploded, everyone burned, and it collapsed in a generation. And this has been happening regularly. The medieval warm, we came back into the quiet period. And then the volcanoes began to erupt. The crops began to fail. Over 30% of the population dies in the first decade, each one of these times. So no matter what happens, if the grid goes down, people are going to lose their mind. There's going to be looting. There's going to be, no one will know how to get fresh water if there's no electricity. And in that case, major cities, you're going to have losses like 70% of people in the first week to month, simply from diarrhea. It's called dysentery. It's going to kill everyone. They're going to drink dirty water that seems clean, and they're going to die. from dehydration because there's no way to get clean water. That's how it goes down. And in the end, the population will be so small. Think about how many products we have on Earth. We're going to be able to glean stockpiles of stuff for decades. Think of all the preppers that have already prepped that won't be here. All the stores that'll be filled with supplies that no one was able to ship anywhere. So after the population is reduced, there's going to be tons of supply on the planet to use. So people that are ingenious, self-sufficient, self-reliant, and still alive will prosper.
You tracked the timelines of these large solar flares. Like you brought up last year, we did have some X-class flares, but nothing like the Carrington event. Having guests like Greg Allison on the show, very knowledgeable. He puts together those incredible energy security grid conferences in Huntsville, Alabama. And he brought up the Carrington event was so extreme that stuff, a lot of, at least for me anyway, I wouldn't think would be affected by the intensity of this flare was fried. I mean, it's just insane. So with everything being digitized now, and with satellites around the world and everything hooked up to a digital footprint, practically, at least in the commerce section and most industries, wouldn't it be safe to, well, so first of all, have you kept track of the data on these flares? And if we have anything close to that in the near future with the grand solar minimum that we're in, would it be like a reset? It would just like fry the whole planet. Just, whoa, no.
Well, a couple things I can comment on here. Let's just go to a different picture because that other one was boring. As far as the X flare that gave John Casey a stroke last year, it sent the KP up to 8 or 9 for at least 6 to 12 hours. I don't remember. I actually went to the store and bought a few $100s I had in my wallet of sugar, coffee, flour, and oil, all from Walmart, because I thought that the grid could be down for a few months. That's how severe of an event it was. And then just a week later, off of the backside of the sun, the same sunspot shot out an X45 or greater. It's impossible to tell. But if that had happened Earth-facing, we would not be talking on YouTube tonight. So here are the stats. Every year, the sun shoots out at least one X flare. Last year, as we descended into this solar minimum, it shot out 2 in the same week. One that gave someone a stroke in the grand solar minimum movement, John Casey. And there was tons of disruptions to the grid from that event. Flights canceled and other computers damaged. But just a week later, an X45 or greater shot off the back of the sun that, in fact, fried Mars. Had there been astronauts on Mars, they would have been dead. And then we're not done. 8 weeks later, an electric comet out by Uranus lit up from the same solar flare that fried Mars. That's how long it takes to get to Uranus. 8 weeks later, a comet lit up from the electricity from that blast. Now, people in the mainstream won't tell you this, but everyone in the electric universe realms that I hang out in, they know that that's what happened. Now, if that solar flare had been Earth-facing, we wouldn't have been doing the show tonight. And so the probability of an X flare is 100% every year. And so there will be another one soon. And the question is, will it be Earth-facing? Because the angle of these shots is very critical. Now, as the magnetosphere wanes over the next few decades, that angle is going to be less critical. If we keep getting near misses because it shoots left and right of our planet, as the magnetosphere wanes, an Emp flare might fry the grid if it's directly Earth-facing. It doesn't matter. The probability of Emp flares is 50 a year. So no matter how you do the math, I give it T-5 years max for grid stability. If we don't harden the grid is going down. And when the grid goes down from a flare, it doesn't come back up in a day, a week or a month or a year. It takes 3 years minimum just to create enough infrastructure and transformers to restart a major city. And if there is no electricity, who's going to make the transformers, Rex? It's a losing situation, which is why preparing, not being scared, not buying into the nonsense, and getting yourself out of harm's way is the best thing you can do. If you live in a city, have a bug out plan. You will have a window unless it's a deadly tsunami. If the grid goes down, do not wait. Pack your shit and go to the country. That's your only hope, because it's going to quickly unravel. The maniacs are going to realize power's not ever coming on, and the looting will begin in under 12 hours. You will literally be in a war zone.
The military, though, will certainly be prepared. They will have their assets and equipment ready. The question is, these FEMA camps and FEMA type camps that I'm sure will be brought out in limited fashion, is it going to be the type of camp that you would even want to be in? Or would it be kind of like what happened in New Orleans when just some very horrible, horrible things happened in that dome that they turned into a giant camp? I think if you have at least, you're also going to need knowledge, because if it's going to be a long-term event, even if you've got a year's worth of food, then what? And also, like I was asking earlier today at your location, I said, well, how long, how many people could you feed with this much land? You're saying 5 to 10 people, depending on, what, I don't remember what else you said, but about 5 to 10 people. And now you could even set things up on the inside of your house where you can do vertical farming in your house and certain things, but you got to start somewhere. Even if you just have a bug out bag and a couple of days worth of food to get you from point A to point B, have some routes in play, or don't, don't, that's cool too. There's always options. And there's people that say, hey man, you're a fear monger. You're scaring me. Watch something else then. If you don't want to be prepared, I get it. You can always go to Camp FEMA. I'm sure they'd love to have you. They'll give you plenty of opportunities. Oh yes. Take this vaccine. Oh yeah. You're going to love it. It's a stupid vaccine. It makes you stupid. You'll feel much better because you won't question it.
Here's the problem. There are so many layered catastrophes waiting to happen, Rex. We have a Cascadia fault zone that is well overdue for a magnitude 7 or greater, as well as a magnitude 9 or greater. We have the Hayward fault I just shared on our channel the other night, which is well overdue for a magnitude 7 or greater. So, and this is all happening as we go into a grand solar minimum, where the mainstream media isn't warning you to prepare for global warming. They're not saying that global warming is going to cause crops to fail, start growing food. No one's saying that. Why aren't they saying that? They're not saying that because they don't care. They want you to pay taxes so that the elites, bunkers, can continue to be lined with more supplies. So I can say, if you're not doing anything, you should at least go to Walmart or another place online and buy seeds. If you only have a few dollars, you can have seeds. That's going to be money. So seeds are something anyone can stockpile that will be money. Keep them in a dry place in the dark, and they last for a long time. Especially if you're in a city, you're going to need some tradables. So stockpile these seeds and start learning about a bug out plan. If you don't have one, you need one. Get a group of people that have a vehicle and, set up a plan. Make it a weekend trip, do a camping trip, the bug out trip if the grid goes down. Some people think they're going to wait in place. What if you're too deep and they shut the roads off? Then the military comes in, Rex, and says no one can leave because it's a state of emergency. And there's a curfew. No one can leave the house until we tell you what to do. But if you got out in the first 4 hours, you'd be driving in the country. Yeah, baby. I made it.
Now, if you would, for just a moment, turn off the screen. I want to show something here real quick, how easy it is to have an acre of organic heirloom seeds. This is the survival seed bank. If you go to preparewithleakproject.com, you could even get organic seeds. And this is a full acre worth of seeds that you can plant. And if you're like Diamond, Diamond's got that green thumb, so he could turn this into some some money. Hello. Yeah, preparewithleakproject.com, preparewithleakproject.com. All right, that's my quick shameless plug, but that's how easy it is. And another thing that I was wanting to talk to Diamond about when he gets back is he is very knowledgeable in the electric. What are those, man? Wait a second. Whoa. Did you see the size of those zucchinis?
Look at these bad boys. These are my guns. Yeah, these have been storing in the barn now for about 5 weeks, and they're just good as new. And I'm about to make zucchini bread with them, but this is a survival food. We've got 80 pounds of these. So, and I give them out freely to all the neighbors that need squash if they want to make bread or whatever. So, and we got 15 of those zucchinis off of 2 plants.
Hello. It looks like you filled those things up with glyphosate and genetically modified junk of something. Those things were massive. You see the size of those things? Well, you just look at it. Okay, so this is what I wanted to talk to you about, Diamond. And then this is great, man. We got over 1,000 people watching. This is some wonderful information. Right now, this is my question to you. This is an ancient Mesopotamian tablet that is thousands of years old, and it parallels some of the Old Testament scriptures, but it also, in my opinion, could be describing maybe Venus coming in or something, because here we go. Just read this out. Enlil and the Labu. And that's describing Enlil and the battle of the dragon, the sea dragon. So Enlil and a great sea monster whose name may be read Labu, that is lion. The name might also be read Kalbu or even Ribu. If this latter reading could be authenticated, it would form a most interesting parallel to the Old Testament. And now my computer froze up. Thank you very much, Gremlins. You had to show up right when I was about to do this, didn't you? Well, you just freaking look at it. It literally froze up. So never mind. I guess I'm not going to do it. Ain't you, computer. We'll have to do this on another podcast. It's literally froze up right now. Your thoughts, Diamond? Piece of Okay, it's working. Here we go. Did it freeze up again? It froze up again. Oh, no. I'm time for a new computer. All right, well, folks, I'm going to have to get a new computer. But I did just get some Illuminati playing cards that are on one sheet, and I'm going to hang them behind me to remind you how a card game from 30 years ago depicted the future. Diamond, let's close this out on a happy note, because this thing's just being retarded, which means slow. That's all I mean by that. It's just being slow. Oh, it's working again. Barely. It's not really. Let's say something positive to close out this podcast, because I'm going to go throw my computer away and get another one. And I'm going to unmute you. Hold on. I've got to unmute you first. You're unmuted.
Here we go.
Now you're muted again. Now you're unmuted again. Now you're muted again. Hey, buddy. Here we go.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Yeah,
I can hear you now.
What I want to say to everyone out there is we have been through this before. Humanity's been through it before. We've made it through. And you know who made it through? It was always the people. Let's take Noah for example. Noah was some crazy man making a boat, and the flood came, and who made it? Noah. So proper prior planning does prevent piss poor performance in these empire-ending cycles, which we're entering into. We are entering into this cycle. The mainstream agrees there's a grand solar minimum coming. Many of them say it's not going to be bad until 2035. If you've seen what David Dubine, Oppenheimer Ranch Project, Ice Age Farmer, and other channels have been reporting on for years, it's nothing but record snows, record colds, Arctic ice is building again, crops are failing. So these are what we said would happen. These events are unfolding. So the time is now to start preparing. Don't wait for more events to unfold, because like we talked about, the biggest threat is our grid, and our sun is our biggest enemy. It's going to make it cold on Earth, and it's going to make it dark when the grid fails and that solar flare comes off. And it is guaranteed. It's not a matter of how, it's a matter of when and how big. That's it. So be excellent and be prepared, not scared. And then you'll be, and live for today, man.
Be excellent to one another, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, so it is coming in and out here, but I'm just going to share this before we close. And I want to do a complete podcast on this with you, Diamond. And I want to get some other experts on the electric universe on this together. The 7 evil demons. This is an ancient Mesopotamian tablet, thousands of years old. The overflowing of Adad. Mighty destroyers are they. At the right of Adad, stalking are they. In the height of heaven, like lightning, flashing are they. To wreak destruction forward go they. In the broad heaven, the home of Anu, the king evilly, do they arise and none to oppose. The home of Anu, ladies and gentlemen, is Uranus. Lightning coming down from heaven, lightning flashing coming down from the height of heaven. Then, so in the broad heaven, the home of Anu, the king evilly, do they arise and none to oppose. When Enlil heard these tidings, a plan in his heart he pondered. With Ea exalted Masu. Of the gods he took counsel, Sin, which is the moon, Shamash, which is Saturn, and Ishtar, which is Venus, whom he had set to order the vault of heaven. So now he's linking up these orbits in heaven, and people are seeing on the planet this chaos. With Anu, he divided the lordship of the whole heaven. So they're talking about the planets. To these 3 gods, his offspring, day and night without ceasing, he ordained to stand. Night and day, he ordained to stand. Doesn't that describe what you've brought up, how the veil was lifted? It used to be always pretty much day, and now we have day and night, and now we're seeing the planets, now we're seeing the gods and the destruction on the earth. Your thoughts?
Yeah, that is a completely different podcast because that is more of the entire GISP-2 ice core. So we have high resolution data that goes back like around 1 million years, which shows that. And also we got to bring in the Sumerian tablets and the King's List, because there was a flood 100,000 years ago that would make Noah's flood or the flood 11,500 years ago look like a bathtub accident. These are huge events. So the 100,000 year event is a doozy. So we need to talk about that because we may also be on that line as well. And that is just insane to ponder. So if we go into bigger scales, we can look at this 100,000 years event that it's actually 126,000 years ago. Oh my gosh. What happened was insane. And probably the Younger Dryas event is the repetition of that 100,000 year cycle, thankfully. But at one of these events, the Earth and the planets in our solar system changed. Now, according to Dave Talbot and the Thunderbolts Project, which is a newly assembled group of multidisciplinary scientists, what we've been able to uncover by weeding through the mythology is that worldwide, all cultures never saw anything until all of a sudden the planets all got in a battle, the moon appeared, and there were stars. And that's kind of how it happened. Before that, everything was perfect. And according to many scholars, there was a purple hue. And if you looked north, what you would see is the polar configuration, which would be Saturn, and in front of it would be Mars and Venus, and behind Saturn would be Jupiter and the other planets in a line. And that we would be covered in this plasmasphere, which is an electrical sheath that would have prevented us from seeing the rest of the universe. And that the events that caused this polar configuration to rip apart, which according to many is your story of Tiamat and Nibiru hitting each other, forming the asteroid belt, and unveiling, actually blinding humanity. Could you imagine if the sun, everyone saw the sun for the first time? That would be bright. It's like going from a dark room outside. You would be like, whoa, I can see the light. Certainly it would be biblical. Creation even.
In the beginning. Wow, man, this was awesome. Had a wonderful time talking with you, Diamond. Thank you for coming on the program. Looking forward to next time. Ladies and gentlemen, check out the Oppenheimer Ranch Project on YouTube. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. Diamond does updates on a daily basis with the Grand Solar Minimum. Also, want to let you know real quick, folks, we have an awesome awesome opportunity coming up next year in Denver. Be there or be square. Now, this is going to be amazing. It's going to be called LeakCon 2019. We're going to have some amazing minds there to discuss the most incredible opportunities of our lifetime and future generations. Make sure to be there. Be excellent to one another. Diamond's going to help out with this. Thank goodness, because if he didn't, then it would be complete chaos, because that's how I roll. Be the change you want to see. Thanks, Diamond.
Thanks, Trex.